Hi, everyone. Welcome to another installment of ESGCT's Ask the Expert. My name is Vanessa Woods. Together with Irene, we're the student board members of the European Society of Gene and Cell Therapy. And we're bringing you this program geared towards PhD students and early postdocs, who we refer to as ECRs or early career researchers, to be able to give you insight into the different career paths that you can venture into after achieving a PhD. So we'll be chairing this session, and I will turn over now to Irene, who will introduce our speaker for today.
Thank you, Vanessa. Hi, everyone from me as well. I'm super excited to introduce you to Dr. Takis Athanasopoulos. He's a good friend of mine, but more importantly, a great scientist, and I think an even greater mentor. So we're super lucky to have him today with us. I'm very briefly going to touch on his career because he's done too many things, and he's going to take us through his journey. So he's actually spent a very long time in academia. As a matter of fact, most of his time so far. He's done a postdoc for a very long time, and he was even with a scholarship with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. He's had also started his lectureship. He found his own consulting company, and now eventually he had, for the last 4.5 years, he's moved to the industry, and this is why his input is going to be extremely useful for us. He's now having the role of director at GlaxoSmithKline at the Cell and Gene Therapy department. So I'm gonna pass it on to you, Takis, and then we hopefully will have an interesting conversation.
Thank you very, very much. Thank you for the wonderful introduction, Irene, Vanessa, Emma in the background. Fantastic work for the European Society of Cell and Gene Therapy. And I'm really privileged and delighted to be invited to give this presentation and to ask any of our audience questions. So I will try to share my screen, and you can tell me whether it works.
Perfect. Well, I can see myself, so let's start.
Is it okay? Can you see the screen?
Perfect, yes. You're ready to go.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. So my name is Dr. Takis Athanasopoulos. Just as an introduction and for our audience, for the European Society of Gene and Cell Therapy, how to submit questions, some logistics. You can send us your questions during the talk using the live chat channels. To use live chat, you may have to sign in beforehand to YouTube with either a YouTube or a Google account. Join the channel. Be alert, your live chat messages are not so private, so everybody can tune in and can read them. Include your name, if possible, and affiliation to your question. Vanessa, I think will, as a chair, will gather all the questions, and we'll ask the speaker audience questions after the talk. And of course, if you are not able to ask questions via the live chat, you can always email them, and I can try to respond back through the organizing committee at Impact ESGCT. So the title of today's talk is Transitioning from Academia to Industry. And I would like to present a little bit of background in the field, but my personal also journey. And through this background, some interesting opportunities and challenges. As Irene mentioned, I'm a director of Cell and Gene Therapy in GSK. That is part of a platform that's called Medicinal Science and Technology. There's a fantastic place to be. So as a definition, and from 1996 that I started my career journey, I was interested in developing ATMPs. What is an ATMP? An advanced therapy medicinal product, are medicines for human use that is based in recombinant DNA technology. This first came in hand, of course, back in 1953 with the seminal introduction of the double helix and the double strand. And of course, there were further discoveries along the way that gave rise to a line of thinking, a school of thinking, with regards to how we can use genetic engineering technologies, gene and cell therapies, to ameliorate human disease. And in doing this, the field of ATMPs classified three main types: the gene therapy medicines, somatic cell therapy, and tissue engineered. And you can read a little bit more about the details of these ATMPs, but also you can have combined ATMPs of the categories, like a biodegradable matrix or scaffold, for example. Why do we need cell and gene therapies then, and these ATMPs? They are a cohort of over 6,000, they say 7,000 these days, genetic diseases. The majority of those, they have afflicting very few patients. Some are monogenic, they are only one gene. Some are multivariant. Others are far common, like the cancer, the diabetes, the atherosclerosis. The majority of these genetic-based diseases, in theory, can be potentially amenable by cell and gene therapies. And there is a huge unmet medical need to do so. In a sense, we have definitions of rare diseases. That is, as part of the European Union definition, is a disease that afflicts less than 5 in 10,000 patients. Although this is around 7% of the population, that somehow there are people that will be affected by a rare disease, this equates to a significant proportion. So, in one hand, the concept of gene therapy is to replace a single gene variation as a monogenic disease. 7% of the population will be affected and afflicted by a rare disease. Some are multivariant, multi-complex diseases. In a sense, the field of gene and cell therapy is applicable to all human disease. The other part that you are also aware is the different phases of clinical trials and of cell and gene therapy clinical trials in particular. So you have different phases, from phase 1 to phase 4, let's say, leading to a marketable product. But of course, there are before that, before the early first time in human, as we call it, status, you have the different stages of discovery research. And myself was mainly part of the discovery part. And this comes from target identification, validation, commit to a lead declaration, as we say, to a lead candidate, and then going forward to candidate select and to the first time in human, in industrial terms. In university terms and academia is slightly different, but the concept is overall the same. And you will hear, and throughout our discussion, terms like maturing towards pre-IND, investigational new drug applications under FDA, or the orphan drug designations in a European context. But all this is has to do with the phases. So the most paramount phase 1 is for safety, and then you target, let's say, for efficacy in other phases. The other point is that there are lots of diseases, cancer diseases. They have the main bulk. So back in 2017, they were representing almost 65% of the whole cell and gene therapy clinical trials. And GSK has a focus on solid tumors and TCR, CAR-T biology. But of course, there are lots of other important diseases, the monogenic diseases, infectious ones, vaccines now. So genetic vaccination is part of the same logic, of the same school. cardiovascular, neurological, and so on. And you can see also various vector systems that they have been used in various cell and gene therapy clinical trials, with adenovirus like the AstraZeneca vaccine being quite popular back in 2017, but now other viral vector systems like adeno-associated virus or non-viral vector system and lentivirus for ex vivo cell and gene therapy taking, I think, popularity. And one review that we participated in and we published recently was on landscape of the early clinical cell and gene therapy. And it's a very populated slide, but you can see here the interest from the big pharma, and you can see here is very small to read, but there are a cohort of companies like Sangamo, Orchard, Spark, Aldebaran, different free-line therapeutics. There's a cohort of biotech and also big pharma that they are interested in cell and gene therapy. And this is global also. So the landscape of this analysis was global. And of course, the majority of trials will be in North America and in the European counterparts. But you can see lots of interest throughout the world for this disease. And China, of course, was the very first that advanced a gene therapy product with Onyx 53. So okay, this is a brief history, and I want to touch these subjects because there are lots of areas where a modern scientist coming out of their studies, either a bachelor's, a master's, or a PhD, could be involved. So you could say, let's say, the different modalities as an area, the different phases. So you can go, let's say, either to the discovery phase, but also there is an interlink between the discovery and the clinical. We call it CMC, chemistry, manufacturing, and control, and they have lots of product development and supply teams that are very active in the field. But also you have heard in previous talks about regulation, so regulatory aspects, interaction with the clinical operation teams, modeling. There is a cohort and variation of themes that cell and gene therapists can interface these days. So a brief history of my time in the cell and gene therapy field, and of course you've seen a far more famous Stephen Hawking here. A brief history of time. That is a very good book actually to read, even as a cell and gene therapist. It started back in my Greek days in University of Patras, where I have studied for a bachelor's in biology and biological science, but with a focus in molecular biology. Then I arrived in January '96 in UK. I got a state scholarship foundation, we call it, is one of the very important fellowships back then that allowed me to pursue a PhD abroad. And you see different milestones through the journey. I started my PhD. I got a home office, personal license. I did some certification in teaching, so a postgraduate certificate in higher education, or in STIL, as it was called these days. I joined George Dixon's lab for the PhD, was awarded in the field of atherosclerosis, and then I did multiple postdoc training for years and years. So we did five main projects. One was using adenoretroviral hybrid vectors for Duchenne muscular dystrophy, a disease that afflicts the musculature and the cardiac muscle. We develop AAV microdystrophin vectors for the same modality, transposable codon and specific genetic optimized elements. Then we went forward to the field of adenoviral vector biology. We developed different versions of a chimp-based add vector expressing HIV genetic elements. So the same concept like AstraZeneca that they are using together in collaboration with the University of Oxford now for their vaccine approach. With Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and the collaboration of AIDS vaccine discovery, we did some studies on design, production, and functional immunological characterization of HIV vaccine vectors. We couldn't identify a vaccine, but it was a fantastic collaboration and under the auspices of Bill Gates and Melinda Gates Foundation. Then I transitioned to a university lecturer back in September 2016. I had a research consultancy position at the same time, and also I decided back in 2014, 6-7 years ago, to found my own company. So I was appointed myself as a CEO of Gene and Cell Limited, with consulting opportunities in ophthalmology, DMD, and rare disease. And that was a fantastic journey, and perhaps my first transition, I had to learn the hard way with my own establishment of a company, how the industrial world is set up and how knowledge in the industry may be acquired. And in 2016, September 2016, I was privileged and delighted to join the cell and gene therapy family of GSK. I had transitioned into a couple of roles as head of transgene delivery, vector and transgene, and now most recently as part of the product development and supply. So that was a brief journey in time, and what I was doing in my last quarter of a century as a cell and gene therapist. But as we say, and I don't know, perhaps Irene has definitely visited this through the way, because there is an interconnection of a road in US that is called Route 101. It's a very scenic route that runs from San Francisco back down to the borders of Mexico and San Diego. So it's a great route if you are visiting US to drive by car in the summer. And this is very, very exciting. You can see lots of things through way. And this is our journey also in cell and gene therapy. The main fact is that we are not standing alone. This knowledge that we acquire, there are lots of previous giants and pioneers and innovators and disruptors of knowledge that we are based upon. And a fantastic scientist and a mentor that we lost was George Athanasopoulos from the Greek family, was the founder of the American Society of Cell and Gene Therapy. But I want to highlight in this, okay, there are lots of twists and turns in your professional and scientific career, but there are also lots of, together with the challenges, there are lots of opportunities. And some of these opportunities I tried to summarize here. So there is some opportunities in deep science, how to learn, for example, how to work with different vectors, let's say in my career trajectory, how to identify the best delivery methods or the best targets together, let's say, with research units and modalities. There are also opportunities in, as we say, the platform technology. So, okay, you decided to do a degree in biology or biochemistry or molecular, and then you had the flavor also of cell and gene therapy. Perhaps you pursued a master's in a relative field. Then you went forward and you thought, okay, I can do a PhD, perhaps in one of cell and gene therapy. But there are other alternatives that you could do even at this point. So there is competitive intelligence, business development, intellectual property and patent law, artificial intelligence and machine learning, cloud computing, management in different iterations, from project to time and change management, bioinformatics. So lots of activities here that that they are not straightforward to interlink or interconnect, but they are fantastic career choices, I guess, and we can discuss through our talk. Then I mentioned a little bit the phases of clinical trials, and you can see here some people may be more interested to come closer to the patient, to have a patient focus, the clinical operations teams, or a regulatory or commercial. And this is a fantastic career choice to explore. Then you can have a subject area, so you can become, let's say, a leading expert in immunology, for example, a tissue tropism or pre-existing immunity, and you can diversify. And immunology goes more into the field of vaccination and vaccines, and you can see here now with the COVID, with the SARS-CoV-19. Something that the whole world is sought after. Brilliant immunologists, but also people, let's say, with knowledge how to not only discover the vaccine, but also to have the ability to produce, manufacture, and bring it to the people through the supply chain very efficiently and very rapidly. And then there are other categories like financial modeling, and even to pursue a career in health economics, an MBA, more veterinary medicine, also other categories like functional genomics, intercalation with small molecules, imaging, automation, or in the field of discovery. So the possibilities are endless. There's nothing that limits your horizons. And everything may come as a start of your cell and gene therapy spark and interest. So this is a few slides or to give some momentum for questions and perhaps to have an interactive session. But also you can always go back. I just listed a few jobs and courses links that you may find useful. Of course, our first comes from our society, the European Society of Gene and Cell Therapy, jobs and courses, but you can find different useful links through LinkedIn, Indeed, and other career choices. And of course, you are very welcome to visit. So that is my introduction, and I'm really happy to go forward for the discussion and take some questions from our audience.
Perfect. Takis, thank you so much for this overview and for sharing with us your personal journey. Before starting, I just want to remind everyone to submit your questions if you haven't already. So I'm going to start with some questions of my own to initiate the conversation. And then we're going to switch to Vanessa, that she's going to start sharing your questions. So please submit them, because the whole point of having this is to give you access to an expert to answer these questions or worries you might have. And so I'm going to start. And Takis, I think, in a sense, I'm going to touch on the last slide and the last points, where it's like all these opportunities, but sometimes there feels like there's so much that there's almost nothing. How does someone navigate through this? And from, I think most of us would have gotten down the PhD way or the postdoc way. And I think it is only fair to say that with all these opportunities and with all these qualifications, people can't but wonder, when is the time, or do I have the right qualification to enter or change now to the industry? So obviously you've spent a very long time in academia, and then eventually from your steps, I mean, you were working on your lectureship, but then you switched to the industry. So I think I would like to start from there. Like, what was going on in your mind at that point, where like a lectureship and then taking up a senior position in the industry happened?
Thank you, Irini. That's a fantastic kind of thinking and questions. I guess there are threefold. One is how to navigate and how to choose carefully through all these opportunities. from is a combination. There is no true answer on this one. Is a combination of focus in your scientific career, something that you want to achieve, something that is inside you, that navigates you and directs you. Something that you like. If you like something and you like to learn this particular area, you will find that lots of opportunities, they may be coming your way, even in a randomized way. So it's a combination of focus, but also being open in define opportunities that you would like to pursue. The second part is when to enter. Okay, so you have so many qualifications. Some people are starting, let's say, with a bachelor's, with a master's degree, with a PhD, multiple postdocs. Some they take even lectureships like me, and then they decide, oh, perhaps I'm mature enough. Now is the time to enter the industry. I spent quite some time in academia. To this extent, again, there is no right or wrong answer. From my experience, I would definitely say that there are pros and cons in both industry and academic setups, and you have to balance the clear innovation of an academia perspective, the freedom to operate, but also see perhaps sometimes the broadening of scope. Sometimes have, let's say, the focus to bring one single lead candidate to the patient. The patient focus is there, and everybody loves to bring something to the patient, but you have to have some structure and focus that perhaps the biotech industry and the big pharma industry may be more tailored to this extent. This is not, though, always the case, because as we mentioned before, comes from your personal motivation, and you could see often lots of leading academic professors that they have their whole life. The patient is their focus, and for this reason they try so hard. And if you say, for example, I would mention one, let's say, of our superheroes, Carl June, that he brought, let's say, hope to millions of patients with CAR-Ts and TCR, T solid tumor technology. So again, there's no clear answer. I guess my advice, trying both worlds, is not to restrict yourself to say, I'm not ready yet, I don't have enough qualifications, but to try to enter the industrial world is very useful to see this side at a very earlier stage. So don't wait until you have all the qualifications and postdocs of this world. Just try to enter early, baptize yourself in the waters of industry, adapt, navigate. It's hard work sometimes, and we have, let's say, people that they are pursuing both their dream of a PhD. So they are finishing their PhD in an industrial environment, and in parallel they are working in the industrial environment, and this is like having double work in a sense. So you are putting double the effort, but it depends on the individual. So I guess, yeah, this is my interpretation. Thank you, Rini. Thank you for the question.
Of course. So basically, Takis and I, we've met as he joined GSK and as I was leaving GSK. So I did it a bit of the other way around. I started in the industry, just finished university, got into the industry, and then 3 years later left to go into academia. But I think, like, most people would have started with doing their master's degree or PhD degree or like a postdoctoral training position, and then would start thinking into like moving into the industry. but I think fairly people wonder what are the main differences. And I would definitely start by saying that it is the kind of like freedom to operate. If I had to give like the biggest differences, it would be in terms of the science, the projects are way more defined on an upper level when you are at a bigger company versus in academia where you are like actually given a project and it's all like a bit blind, and you're more free to divert depending on the results that you get. So from your experience so far, both from like mentoring your employees but also from your more senior level, what would you say the main differences are?
The, there is one difference is you mentioned the freedom to operate. Both they give you certain freedom towards discovery, but the industry world is more project and portfolio aligned, lots of milestones oriented. And that means that you have to execute certain projects at defined
Or
time.
deadline focused as
Yes,
well.
time deadlines, exactly. So this is one. But saying that, lots of academic establishments, because they have this experience from the industry world, they set up like that. So I mentioned the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation project. There they had lots of similarities because there was a huge reporting levels, structure. We had the interaction of yes. Exactly. So it's an intermixed world now. I think we try to gain the best of both worlds in a sense. And now on the previous point also, there are lots of careers in industry that they start at different levels. So you have, let's say, careers accumulated from associate scientists or industrial placement students to senior directors, corporate executive. And at different stages, you can say, okay, what is the difference, let's say, between an academic professor and someone that is a CEO of an industrial setup and company? I guess, again, is the focus is there for both of them, and the portfolio is narrow because you cannot achieve everything in the world. But the industrial CEO has to, although has certain investors, certain people that are behind, shareholders, that they line towards a certain execution of the study. In the academia, of course, you have the vice chancellor, the chancellors, that again they direct a certain portfolio. They need lots of grants for the university. They need lots of student numbers in order to bring some capital. The capital is less of a problem in the industry world, but the money is not free. They will invest the money, exactly. They will invest the money in order to achieve something that is a milestone and portfolio orientated.
I guess it's interesting, like the fact that you mentioned like the Gates Foundation, because my postdoc now is also like funded by the Gates Foundation. And I almost found it maybe it's like somewhere in between, right? Because you still have like a project that is some sort free for you to operate, but there's also so many objectives, and they fund you to carry on with those objectives. So I'd say, yeah, clearly, even when you are in academia, depending on the type of funding, it can also have its own limitations. So that's, I guess, guess true. So, okay, I think it's time to pass on. I just wanted to initiate the conversation, but most importantly, we should give the opportunity to people to ask their questions and hopefully benefit from this conversation. So I'm gonna pass it on to Vanessa and get back to you in a bit, Takis. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rini.
Thank you, Takis, for that very nice talk. And we have a lot of excited people on the call who want to delve a little bit deeper into what you've presented. So the first question comes from Luis Lopez Navas. I hope I pronounced your name correctly. So Luis is currently working as a regulatory scientist and actually wants to know if you have any advice for someone that does not have any previous experience in the industry.
That's a very good question, Luis, and thank you, Vanessa, for passing. So, no previous experience to the industry. However, accumulated knowledge and industrial interaction, because from a regulator perspective, you have to interact with CROs, with CMOs, contract manufacturing organizations, with industrial setting, perhaps even the big pharma. I don't know exactly the portfolio of activity. So through their projects, through the on-the-job training, as we say in the industry, you gain critical elements that can navigate you forward to your next potential role. In a sense, my advice perhaps to Luis is learn as wide as possible, try to gain applicable knowledge, ask what the people working in a similar industrial setup they may need for the particular role execution, and say will be in a very promising crossroads very soon to her professional life to choose forward a fantastic position in an industrial setup. Sometimes is how you structure also your CV. I don't know. I'm not perhaps the very best because of my academic training, but normally you have to be very focused. A couple of pages, industrial setup. The academic CVs, they may extend. Let's say, and you have to say everything that you have achieved in your life, so it can go up to 20 pages. so sometimes when going forward, let's say to the industrial role, I guess learn what is the role requirement, ask people in the industrial setup, and also put your CV at a presentation that is more suitable, let's say, for the industry setup.
Thank you for that very detailed answer, Takis. So now we have one also from Yanka Matrai, who was our speaker last month. Thank you for joining us, Yanka. And she wants to know, she also says, thank you for that nice talk. And she would like to know, how do you start your own consulting company? What are the practical steps? And who are you consulting? And how do you establish clientele? So it's a multi-part question, but maybe we start with the first one. How do you start your own consulting company?
So it depends where you are. Thank you, Yanka, for the lovely question and for our audience. And congratulations to your presentation that I have seen in YouTube, far better than mine. But how you establish your own company? It depends on the regulatory framework of the country that you will put forward your application. So I guess Yanka was based in Belgium.
Yes.
Me, I'm based in the UK. Some people, let's say, may be based in other parts of Europe, as the European Society, or even US. So it depends. You have to see first the framework of the country. From a UK standpoint, it's very easy. It's relatively easy because what you have to do is to interact with certain authorities. There are sites that are automatic generators for your website, for inducting you into the HMRC, as we call it, for taxation, let's say, purposes. And you have to another establishment that's called the company house. So there are three things. Let's say have your own website, advertise, let's say, what you do. You have to describe perhaps your knowledge, your expertise, where you want to consult, the consulting area. Build the framework according to the country that you are. Say what is the regulatory framework. There are certain packages that are automatic. So let's say you can create a company in a day in UK, so it's very easy. But in certain other countries, in Greece, in US, the framework is far stricter, and you have to say, let's say, and put forward lots of paperwork. So I guess it's country dependent, but I wouldn't say that is extremely difficult. The other thing that you can do is perhaps to establish a company in another country. If the framework of your own country is very difficult, you can have, let's say, subsidiaries. So I guess these two tactics I would advise to Yanka. What was the second, third, and fourth point?
The first and second, and then the third and fourth. Who are you consulting, and how do you establish clientele?
The clientele, yes. The consulting has to be based on your expertise. Sometimes the clientele finds you as a word of mouth. If you have consulting certain companies and you give good advice, and sometimes you have a good outcome out of it, there may be people that they may be approaching you, let's say. So in order to self-advertise, perhaps a good profile, to establish your profile perhaps in LinkedIn or through other means of social media may be advisable to self-advertise in a way what you do, or a good website. The other thing is to target your clientele. So in a sense, if you are offering cell and gene therapy advice, you have to see your particular niche and particular area of expertise, regulatory, for example, for Yanka, or vectorology, more for me, let's say, things like that, and or general. So your life, your professional life brings you to lots of knowledge, and you acquire knowledge every time. So let's say you can use part of this knowledge that you have acquired, but then you can target, and you can say certain newly established biotech companies with boards that are expanding. They may need some consulting strength, horsepower in order for them, let's say, to achieve the momentum to go forward towards success. So I think is two ways. So Vanessa, either the clientele identifies you from previous good advice and consultancy, or you have to target, let's say, with this way based on your particular area of expertise.
Thank you, Takis. So we have another one from Annika, who wants to know, from your experience, does postdoc time count as work experience when applying for industry jobs? Yes
and no. But mostly yes. So we had a very interesting chat recently with Irini on this topic. Sometimes they advertise industry positions, and they are very specific in their resume. So in a sense, they say, okay, we need for a senior scientist position, a PhD, and X years of experience, or sometimes they say or equivalent. So a PhD or equivalent and X years of experience. And this goes for various positions. Some people, let's say, they go for more senior roles that, okay, PhD is required or equivalent, plus 5 years of experience. Or for leadership roles, if you go to the C executive suits, they may even require 10, 15 years of experience. So that means this can be industrial experience. So normally for industry, they appreciate more your industrial experience and logic, but it can be also postdoc experience. From my personal point of view, the earlier you enter into the industry, the more industrial experience you will gain, and that will navigate you to more industry-based positions. So if you want, let's say, to pursue a career in industry, I think my personal advice, although I did something different, is to try to enter the industrial setup earlier. You don't need so many postdocs. Just find, let's say, opportunities. See your focus, see the area that you like, and you want to cultivate, and enter earlier into the industrial setup.
So she also had a follow-up question. What do you think is an acceptable period to switch, 1 to 3 years?
0. So just after finishing your PhD, if you find an opportunity that is aligned to your career perspectives, don't always take the first job on offer. I think that will be good. The postdoc will give you, okay, PhD towards the last year or years, let's say, of your PhD, because in certain establishments, let's say in UK, is now 3 years, but in other parts of the world, it can be 5 years or 6 years or more. So towards the last year or years of your PhD, you mature into an independent leader and thinker. You are the expert of your project. You sometimes you reach your PhD viva voce examination, and you understand, okay, you don't know everything in this world, but you are a leading expert in your field of study. That means that you have the maturity to lead projects. The postdoc is another training opportunity. In US, they call it a training, postdoc training, let's say, opportunities. And that means that they offer you lots of alternative projects to prove that you can lead this project. The same concept is in the industry world. You have, let's say, scientific leaders, project leaders, and project team managers that they are allocated as we call it, the single point of accountability and decision making for a particular project to drive this project to success. So postdoctoral training is very useful because they will give you lots of examples, but even with one example, you have, I think, the knowledge to pursue together with on-job experience, the industrial setup. So I would say as early as possible, you are ready. You are ready enough.
Takis, just like following up on what you just said. So, but don't you think that, so say someone enters without a postdoctoral traineeship, and they have a PhD. So, I mean, obviously every company or every country would have like slightly different positions, but if we take it for GSK, if you enter with a PhD, you have like, you tend to get the senior scientist position, and then with the postdoc, you're like given the investigator position, right? But without the postdoc, how do you sort of like do this as in progressing once you're in the company? Because I always found it kind of like the people with the postdoc, if they start from the investigator's position, that it just might be a bit easier to progress than in the company.
It's a very good question, and it depends also on your personality and scientific rigor. There are different career ladders in both industry and academia, I guess, because now even in academia you have, let's say, the teaching ladder and you have the research ladder. And in industry, you have something like the fellows or scientific career ladder. Now, as you rightfully mentioned, for a big pharma, for GSK, you enter typically having your PhD at the senior scientist level. And in order to progress towards an investigator, can be from your personal performance. So there are certain performance criteria. Some are objective, and because there are lots of people managing, let's say, their criteria in parallel with your manager. There is a team of managers and directors that will discuss in order to progress, let's say, from a scientific level of research scientist to the investigator level. Depends on your personal, I think, progression, achievements, and if you have, let's say, a fantastic trajectory within the company, you can be very bright. You can be, let's say, hardworking. There are the circumstances also. Sometimes certain projects are far more promising than others, and you can accelerate, let's say. So you have certain elements of internal progression. The other way, as you rightfully said, is to gain these qualifications externally in the academic world. So to have, let's say, 1 or 2 postdocs, and then by applying to a position, you already have acquired the investigator experience. So there are 2 worlds, but both routes are achievable. It depends on a number of criteria. Sometimes some are more subjective than others. And of course, and line managers may be having a fault in their assumptions, sometimes whom to progress or whom not to progress. But I guess there are 2 routes, and on-the-job experience is one that I would favor. For this reason, in my previous question, I was an advocate of joining earlier the industrial setup.
So I will just follow up with that with a question that we received last time from Gerald Hall, who asked, are there any specialized skills you would recommend PhD students to have to be successful in starting in industry positions? And this goes in line with your previous answer that the earlier you start, so immediately from the PhD, then what skills then during the PhD that you would advise would be most relevant for you to gain a successful start in the industry?
Very good question. Thank you so much. I would say that there is a logic that is slightly different between the academia and industry, and you have to acquire or try to understand elements of this knowledge. Certain organizations, for example, within UK, certain communities like Innovate UK, or establishments that they are interconnecting the industry with academia, for example, through schemes that they train members of a team of scientists to take responsive roles in an industrial setup. What I mean, we had an opportunity to interact with BBSRC. So this stands for is a research council in UK, let's say, that was comprised of industrial members. So some they were CEOs of a company, some chief scientific officers, some they take the CFO, chief financial officer, some the chief technology officer role, and that was the panel. That was the examination panel, let's say. On the other contrasting end, there was a team of mostly PhD students, and I was one of those actually, that we had to acquire, build a company from scratch. That was a theoretical company, and acquire these roles. So I was, at the time, I remember the CFO, and an unsuccessful CFO of a company. We came second in the competition, saying that. But that second position was because of me. If it was another CFO, we may have the first position. So what I mean is there are lots of opportunities to understand the logic of a structure of a biotech or a big pharma company. Earlier interaction, let's say, as part of your so you pursue your PhD studies, and you will have a fantastic, very interesting, let's say, academic project. In parallel, you have to identify such opportunities, become a little bit more entrepreneurial, build your own company, even as a one single pony startup. Have an idea, perhaps become an expert and start consulting on your idea, and interact as member of such organizations to understand more the structure of an industrial setup.
Thank you. Robin Bell wants to know, do you find that you have enough freedom and experience when working in a company such as GSK to explore your own ideas?
Very good question, Robin. Sometimes. It depends where you are in the line of command. Even at a very high hierarchical road, that you think that you have more freedom to operate. So even if you are a senior vice president of the company, someone, let's say, there is always a framework. So let's say someone may be far more senior than you and pass different decisions. So the senior vice president may have to interact with the senior vice president of the medicinal science and technology unit that wants a certain direction to go, or a certain modality. So you want to do something for people with monogenic rare disorders, and the company can tell you, yes, it's very useful, but on this particular business plan cycle, we will run forward with solid tumor and this type of technologies. So sometimes you have very novel ideas. Sometimes you have the power to prosecute certain ideas, but you have different milestone-oriented, portfolio-oriented, and company-oriented, let's say, decisions that they may restrict you in certain ways. The other thing is where you are in the structure of a company. So if you are in the discovery research part, in the early phases, you are having more intellectual capacity, theoretically, because you interact at the stages of target validation, target identification, selection, let's say, of useful targets, something new, novel technologies, exploring, let's say, novel platforms in cell and gene therapy, novel vector systems. So you have a little bit of novelty. And also you have lots of interaction, and this is not negligible. Perhaps you don't have the freedom to operate per se, because of the strategy of the company, but you have different interactions that you build upon. So let's say interactions with the academic world and setup. So you always have, let's say, a partner that can be highly innovative and can be very attractive in giving lots of ideas and lots of tools in your own industrial setup research. So in short, for Robin's question, I would say it depends where you stand as part of the company structure. If you are earlier stages, you may have more potential and dynamic to innovate, and with whom you are collaborating. If you are collaborating with high innovators and disruptors, you will align and you will acquire and acquisite novel ideas.
Thank you. So final question is coming from me to close this part of the live Q&A, and it's more of an unfair two-part question. So I will ask you, what would you say would be the advantage for there are master students on the program right now? So what is your advice to continuing on to doing a PhD if you know that ultimately you want to go into the industry? Why not just stop with a master's? And if you're going to a more specialized role, for example, in patent law or business development, as you mentioned, these are things that require additional trainings. So probably you have to do some form of an MBA. So what is the advantage of having a master's, of having a PhD under these circumstances?
This is a very, very good question from career trajectory, Vanessa. And again, it depends on your personal path, how you tackle professionally your future. In a sense, PhD is the highest qualification. Is very useful because by obtaining a PhD, you are not feeling restrictive by the future choices that you will make potentially. So what I mean, sometimes they advertise a position and they say PhD or equivalent. Okay, so this or equivalent is very important, and 5 years of experience. Certain positions, they don't mention the equivalent. They say PhD or MD. So automatically, you can apply for the position, but your chances are somehow more restricted in comparison to other candidates that they may have this qualification. So this one part, let's say, of the conversation. On the other hand, lots of CEOs, established CEOs, fantastic thinkers in our field and in the field, let's say, of cell and gene therapy, they don't hold necessarily a PhD qualification. So you can say lots of high leaders, let's say, and of companies and CEOs, and you have seen, let's say, multiple examples, not only from a cell and gene therapy perspective. I don't want to be restrictive, let's say, in our community, but lots of fantastic CEOs, they don't need a PhD qualification because they have acquired their own job training. They have years of experience within their industrial setup. And this is far more useful than perhaps a theoretical PhD in astrophysics. That can be useful sometimes because Brian May, the guitarist of Queen, has a PhD in astrophysics. So it can become useful and a useful balance. Okay, sometimes. What I mean is, I think it's not necessary. And you are right for additional qualifications for MBA. What is its attractiveness, or from health economics? The attractiveness is the knowledge that you acquire. Of course, people will always look at, let's say, a list of your qualifications, but through the interview stages, fairly soon, they will understand also your depth of knowledge and your interest in the field. So if you made your own company, you are interested in the entrepreneurship world, if you studied different elements of courses, let's say, so one of the list elements I put, let's say, is Coursera. That is an example, let's say, of where you can study various courses, degrees. And you have an interest in health economics or MBA assets. So they say, okay, he or she is very knowledgeable in this field. He or she may not hold an MBA qualification, but has all the necessary elements and the understanding to pursue on this career path. So I would say, although it's not a necessity, a PhD may be, as the highest qualification obtained, may open to you more theoretical opportunities. Abandon restrictions.
Thank you so much, Takis. And with that, I will close the live Q&A part. If you're on the live right now and you still want to submit questions, please feel free to go ahead and email them to us at impact@esgct.eu, and we will forward your questions to Takis, who will very kindly and gladly respond to you directly. So now I will turn over to Irene.
Yes, I really enjoyed your conversation, guys, and I hope people had the opportunity to ask their questions. And like Vanessa said, like a lot of the times we still have some remaining questions. So we don't really give the choice to Takis. He will answer them and he will get back to you. But just to conclude, but just to conclude our session, as that was like the focus of moving to the industry, I wanted to wrap up by, it is not a philosophical point, but I'm not sure how to put it in like words and structure a grammatically correct sentence, but I think it's fair to say that the view we've been having on industry has been reshaped and has really been changing over the years. And mentally, sometimes that can be something that a bit more traditional scientists can be struggling with, because we've been brought up with this more academic familiar model. And now suddenly, and especially in the field of cell and gene therapy that really started as an academic endeavor and has mainly been for like so many years, now we see the dynamic entrance of like startup companies, biotech, big pharma. And so that has really reshaped our view on, you know, actually going to the industry is not the evil, but it can be what most people want to be at right now. So in just like a few sentences, how would you describe the industrial experience you're having now versus what you could potentially be having in your mind it's gonna be?
A very, very interesting question, Irene. I think it's great. To summarize in one word, I would highly recommend to everybody to see for oneself, and did it meet my expectations? I think yes. It's you can identify yourself that you continuously learning in various fields. Is it always ideal? Not always, because you can see lots of processes and systems and lots of operational controls and change management and reorgs and various elements that somehow they disrupt your forward positive thinking. But is an experience that I would recommend without a bias to everyone, at least to test the water, to try it. And I hope that we gave certain elements through our discussion today to initiate and spark this enthusiasm for at least our younger members of our society.
Perfect. Okay, well, thank you once more. I can't tell you how happy I am that you've joined us in this, that you shared your journey, your like input, and hopefully we've helped some people on the line just like get a better grasp of what working in the industry can be, or answer some questions on how to make that transition. Obviously, everyone always has their journey, but also to the people on YouTube Live, you can always feel free to reach out to us if you have any suggestions of what you would like us to discuss. And yes, Takis, thank you, because you've always been so close to the younger generation and so supportive of the youngest generation, and really relating with, you know, some of our struggles and our worries. So I hope that people can still reach out to you after this and hopefully get some more input.
Of course, would be a pleasure. And you guys, you give me the strength, energy, enthusiasm. So please go always ahead. You make me younger.
Oh, hope so, hope so. Okay, well, thank you, everyone. We will see you again next month. We're going to advertise our next event very shortly. So stay in touch, follow us on social media. Again, send us any questions or any recommendations. And yeah, we'll see you next month. Thank you all. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, guys.